Where's Lisa?
Go to the restroom.
She's in the restroom. Or she's that thing right there.
This is case number 13-8320, the People versus Robert Bashara. Today is the date for a post-conviction motion.
This is for the record.
Good morning, Your Honor. John Voitala for the People.
Lisa Lindsay on behalf of People of the State of Michigan.
Mark Hindley on behalf of the people.
Ronald Ambrose, appearing on behalf of Robert Bashara.
Your Honor, I have a motion in limine before we begin. Based on a conversation I've had with the defense counsel, he intends to try to introduce the transcripts of Mr. Gentz's interrogation. And additionally, I believe he wants the defendant to read from those transcripts while he's testifying. That is inappropriate. That is, the scope of this hearing is how his attorneys, Mr. Bashara's attorneys, were ineffective at trial. What's in those transcripts? Mr. Gentz didn't testify. So why does he get to put the transcripts in at this post-conviction hearing and put them in the record when the fact of the matter is Mr. Gentz didn't testify? So what he's trying to do now is inappropriate at this hearing.
Mr. Ambrose.
Your Honor, one of the things that we're presenting is my client, first of all, never saw the video of Gentz's interview. And from pretty much day one, he was hindered by the prosecution. They wouldn't allow a laptop within the jail so that he could actually view these Gentz's interviews. At the very beginning of the case, Joseph Gentz was named as a witness. And I have transcripts that was provided to me of the interviews, which were never provided to Mr. Bashara.
What's the significance? Excuse me, madam. What's the significance if they were or they were not?
Because it could have, it certainly would have helped Robert Bashara inform his attorneys of the inaccuracies within Gentz's story.
But it wasn't presented at trial. So how was he prejudiced by something that was not presented at trial?
The timeline is an issue in the case.
Okay, and you indicate you had transcripts of that interview, so therefore the lawyer, or the lawyer, when I say you, I mean the lawyer, was aware of the timeline. So where is lacking? The fact that he visually saw it is cumulative at best. The fact that he was given a transcript of these proceedings shows the timeline, if you're saying that's what's in essence.
No, what I'm saying is he wasn't even provided with the transcripts. So he couldn't even read it at the jail to inform his attorneys and help in the assistance of its defense.
Mr. Ambrose, how long have you been a lawyer?
20-some years.
Being a lawyer, and I know you agree with me, all the defendant due process requires the defendant be apprised of what he's charged with. There's no constitutional right to discover it. And if a client doesn't get it, there's no violation. We did better than that in this case. We gave this man 2 lawyers, a staff, as well as accommodated him the best we could. No, we didn't give him a laptop. But the court believed that was going a little bit far, and I was concerned about the constraints of being able to pick up different information without having that laptop. But getting back to this is that your client, the fact that the court even did what it did, I'm not going to allow it. Let's go forward. It's noted for the record. You ready? Okay, first of all, we had an opportunity to have a sidebar. There was a witness you wanted to present that had a health element. Is that correct?
That is correct, Your Honor.
I had indicated to you I'd be willing to put a bench warrant on her if she was in fact served, but it's your opinion that you don't want to do that. Is that correct?
I do not. I had correspondence with her last night, and I'm not sure if she has a doctor's meeting later on this morning, so I don't know what her status is right now.
Okay, very good. So you willing to waive this witness?
At this point,
Well, what other point is it?
well, I'll have to find out at 11 o'clock if she's available.
Okay, very good. No
All right.
problem. I'll accommodate you.
I appreciate that.
Sir?
Your Honor, I did have an objection to that particular witness because I don't think that witness is even relevant for this proceeding. From looking at her affidavit, it seems as though her testimony is either going to be that people that are involved in BDSM are just like any other people in the community, which I don't think is anything that's relevant to this particular hearing. And the second thing that she may present is that Mr. McCarthy and Ms. Diallo were ineffective for not calling someone who has experience in the BDSM community, which it's this court's determination as to whether there was ineffective assistance of counsel or not in not calling somebody. And nonetheless, there were several people, as stressed by the defense, there were several people in the BDSM community that did testify in this particular hearing. So I just don't see the relevance of her particular testimony for this particular hearing.
This person is not just an ordinary person, she's an attorney, and she represents people within the lifestyle. It was something that the jury...
Oh, now, wait a minute. Hold on for a minute. She's an attorney, and she's in a lifestyle. And what is that?
I didn't say that she was in the lifestyle, but she represents people within the lifestyle.
Oh, okay. Well, she just happens to represent people in a lifestyle, and she's an attorney. And what is that going to do?
Because the jury was not adequately informed.
Are you kidding? I know you did not read that transcript. The court leaned over backwards. There were many masters who testified in this particular matter. The court gave extensive leeway so that the jury could understand the lifestyle. And so you're saying that because this one witness who just happens to be a lawyer was not presented, as somehow Mr. Bashir is at a disadvantage?
This is not just any person that is engaged she's an attorney. She represents people in the lifestyle. And that would have been...
That makes her more believable or less?
Well, let's put it this way. I mean, if the general public doesn't know about the lifestyle, she could have been qualified as an expert in this area, since she does know.
To say what?
To say that this is not as sinister of a lifestyle as people may think.
The lifestyle was not on trial.
If
The
it,
killing of Jane Bashara was.
I wish
and I want you to separate the two, okay? We're not condemning him for the lifestyle. That's not an issue, okay? The killing of Jane Bashara is why we're here.
if the killing of Jane Bashara was the sole issue in this case, Robert Bashara wouldn't have been charged.
Oh, he wouldn't have been?
Well, the evidence wasn't there for it.
Okay, well, I think 12 jurors disagree with you.
Because we got into the lifestyle.
Okay, very good. Look, I'm gonna lay off of that for right now. You don't even know this woman is available, okay? We'll deal with that later. So we'll just put that in abeyance about the calling of her, and the court will make a determination at a later time. You ready, Mr. Bashir?
May I have 2 minutes with my attorney right here?
You want to sit over here?
Yeah, I'll go in the
Yeah,
house.
let's go there, okay?
Just 2 minutes is all I
Take
need.
your time. We're not in a rush. I'm a little sugar. Take your time, Mr. Bashir. Ready? All right, Ms. Bashir, okay. Ms. Lindsay?
Yes, right
Are you
here.
ready to proceed at this time?
Yes, ma'am.
Very good. Mr. Bashir, you're up. We'll take a break at 11 o'clock or around 11:30, Mr. Ambrose, so that you can ascertain the status of that potential witness.
I appreciate it.
Okay, very good. Let me just re-swear you, sir. Raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear affirm testimony about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the true self you got?
I do.
Please be seated. Thank you. You may proceed, Mr. Ambrose.
State your name. State your name.
Robert Michael Bashara, Sr.
You're the defendant in this case, correct?
Yes, I am.
Is this the first time you ever testifying in court?
Yes, it is.
All right. Speaking of that, was it your belief that you wanted to testify in the first trial? Is that correct?
Most definitely. I asked my attorneys several times to put me on the stand, and their response was, if you go on the stand, you'll be convicted.
Okay. What kind of discussion did you have with them regarding that? Did you have...
Multiple discussions that I thought that the facts in this case were absolutely wrong, that I knew, excuse me, that I knew a lot about individuals and certain people that were saying things that weren't true.
Okay. Let me stop you right there, okay? Because I want to get this out at the very beginning. Did you have any type of involvement in the murder of Jane Bashara?
I did not. I did not hire, or I did not conspire, and I was not in that garage with Mr. Gentz at all.
Okay. Now, the judge has ruled regarding some of the transcripts of Mr. Gentz, correct?
That's unfortunate, but yes.
All right. Now, had you ever seen those prior to the trial?
Prior to...
The trial?
No, I have not.
Okay, but since then, I provided those to you, correct?
You have within the last 3 weeks.
Okay, and what do you think of those? If you had those transcripts prior to trial, do you think those would have been helpful for your defense?
Most definitely.
Okay, and why is that?
Well, because there's so many things that he says that are absolutely false. And he talks about timelines and about things happening and time, amount of time that he spent where. First of all, he says he came to my house at 7 o'clock. In 2 of his 3 statements, in his investigative subpoena, he says...
I'm going to
Counsel,
object.
witness, that's an
I'm going to object to everything and ask for it to be stricken off the
Now
record.
strike it.
Thank you.
Okay, you can't allow the testimony in the back door, okay? I've ruled. So as far as the timelines are concerned, I want you to lead him in this area, okay?
Okay. What you read, according to...
Your Honor, I'm going to object to anything he read. He's here to testify.
Let him ask the
Okay.
question.
Okay.
After reviewing the transcripts of the first 2 interviews with Mr. Gentz, he has a timeline of about 7 o'clock that he arrived at 7 o'clock in the evening of January 24th, 2012, that he arrived at your residence. Is that accurate?
That's what
I'm
he's...
going to object because essentially all he's doing is putting the transcript in through him, saying, I read it and this is what it said.
I'm going to give it a little leeway in this area. Go ahead.
That's what has been said by him in those transcripts, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wait a minute, just
Okay.
stop. Ask another question.
Okay, Judge.
No, ask another question.
Okay.
Let me be the judge. Go
Okay.
ahead.
There's another transcript a day before Mr. Gentz pleads guilty. Are you aware of that transcript?
I am.
And at that point, does the timeline change?
Yes.
Your Honor, I'm
Counsel, it's
objection.
inappropriate, it's not relevant. It wasn't presented.
Right.
So let me ask this question.
Can we have it stricken off the
And
record?
the court is going to strike it off the record. Mr. Gantz, prior to trial, indicated he would not be a witness in this matter. As an appellate lawyer, you know you cannot put a person on the stand who's asserted their Fifth Amendment right not to testify. So what we're getting into is inadmissible. Let's move on, okay?
One of my,
I rule.
I appreciate that, Your Honor. Gentz's statements were still part of the trial.
I ruled. Move on.
Fair enough. Mr. Bashara,
Yes.
your relationship,
I'm sorry.
when were you married to Jane Bashara?
I was married April 26, 1985.
Okay. How long had you dated her prior to?
So what are we
No,
doing?
the witnesses have been sequestered. I've already indicated to the...
I'm not Joe Bruce.
Oh, okay.
Now look,
Okay, sorry.
don't be putting people out my courtroom
Okay,
that want to
Judge.
be in here, okay? Just identify people in my courtroom.
Sorry, Judge.
Okay, very good.
I'm sorry, could you repeat the
Let's
question?
Yeah.
do it again. They were dating. We're not going too far
Okay,
back.
I won't. And you were married to her when?
I married her in 1985, April 26.
Okay. During your relationship with her, you had 2 children, correct?
We did.
All right. And during your marriage with her, she was in a couple of car accidents, is that correct?
She had a very serious car accident where she rear-ended a bus due to black ice. She lost 4 to 5 of her teeth by hitting the steering wheel, and that, her teeth were her pride and joy because she spent so much time in the dentist chair prior to that, and now she had months and months, really years of recovery due to that.
Okay. And what year do you recall that as happening?
I think Jessie was around 5 or 6, so I'm going to say 94, 95. Well, Jessie
When
was,
she had an accident,
yeah, she was in an accident. She rear-ended,
94, 95?
I'm quite sure that's about it, maybe 96.
Okay.
And
Yes.
you cared for her during her recovery.
Absolutely, I cared for her every day of her life.
Okay.
Absolutely, I cared for her.
And at some point during your marriage, both you and her had some medical issues, is that correct?
Yeah, with me, it was pretty consistent. My weight was a problem. I was heavier than I should have been. As a result, I developed diabetes, high blood pressure. Jane had, later in life, when she turned around 45, started showing signs of menopause, where she had night sweats and hot flashes. And so, from both of our standpoints, the physical relationship diminished greatly. When she had this accident, passionate kissing certainly was out because her mouth was sore and her teeth were very vulnerable. She couldn't eat solid food like she did in the past, like biting into an apple or chewing something that was solid. But as we got older, the physical relationship dwindled. She did have a cyst on her vagina that I helped her over the months and years put compresses on, drain, and put cream on. And I know she went to her OB, which is one of the reasons why I asked my defense to go and get the health records and talk to the OB, so there was that on the record.
Okay.
I thought it was
Now,
important.
Important for what?
Important to show that I just didn't go out and have an affair, Your Honor, that my involvement in the lifestyle
Okay,
was,
so to show that you didn't have an affair, because she had these health issues with her vagina?
she did. She had, first of all, her,
So that you just wanted to show that's why you went outside your marital home?
no, that's not the reason, that's not the sole reason.
What was the sole reason? That you
There was
wanted
no,
to come in?
there was no sole
What
reason,
did you
Your Honor.
want to come in for?
What did I want, what, I'm sorry?
to her medical records to come in to evidence for?
Because I think it's important to show that the physical part of our relationship was over. Patty Matthews talked about...
Okay, very good. Okay, go ahead.
Okay.
Okay.
So, and did you and Jane Bashara have discussions about that?
On a regular basis, absolutely. But let me say that even though the physical, the love-making end of it was over, every night we cuddled, we kissed. There was not one person who sat in this chair that testified that there was any marital discourse. Not my family, not her family, no one said there was any marital discourse, which was the prosecution's, one of their main theories in this case.
Okay. And when you spoke to Jane Bashara about your issues, her issues, what did she tell you?
Well, it wasn't a matter that she told me. We both understood where we were at. We had both had our health issues. We were getting older. She was 3 years, 2.5, 3 years older than I. And so we were progressing into our late 40s, early 50s. And the love and the caring never stopped. Absolutely never stopped.
But what about your sexual desires or instincts or what have you?
Well, I'm a hot-blooded 40-plus-year-old male, and
But I thought you said you were sick.
no,
That you couldn't do all
no,
this stuff.
I had diabetes and high blood pressure.
But you still was hot-blooded.
Yes, ma'am.
All right.
And I did have erectile dysfunction, but it doesn't mean, and I don't know how familiar you are with it.
I'm not.
Well, I am. And you still are able to have urges, you still are able to have orgasms. If you want to be real, we're here to get out the facts.
Let it all
We're
go.
here to get the facts out, and so that's still something. And Jane and I, every night, we cuddled, we were together, we kissed. There was no love lost at all. In the morning, when I got up, a lot of times I would get up, make her a hot tea as she got ready. We got the kids off to school. And then my mother-in-law, when they were younger, would come over and assist us in the raising and the care of our home. And after...
Ask a question.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Mr.
Go ahead.
Ambrose.
All right. Did she know that you were well, you had sexual desires, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right, and what was did you guys talk about that?
We did.
Okay, and what was her
She
response?
knew that I viewed pornography on occasion on the internet. It wasn't like I was a regular viewer. And let me say that I didn't just seek the lifestyle out.
Okay, but let me ask,
Yes.
we'll kind of get into that. I want to concentrate on your relationship with Jane, and then...
Of course.
And did she ever tell you at one point, give you some sort of permission to go outside of the marriage?
Absolutely. It wasn't just one point. It was on several times. She said, look, you do what you need to do to take care of yourself. I understand that we are handicapped with with what I'm prepared to do to satisfy you from a sexual standpoint only.
Okay.
Okay?
And I think in your affidavit that you submitted to the court, she made a comment about embarrassment and...
Absolutely. She
Yeah.
said, her comment was, you do what you need to do to take care of yourself, just don't embarrass me or the family. And not at one time has anyone ever been embarrassed.
No. You can only testify as to what you said. It's up to the court to determine whether or not anyone testified or said X, Y, Z from the stand. So that's the focus. Go ahead.
Okay?
All right, thank you.
All right, so she says to you, don't embarrass me, don't embarrass the family.
Right.
Okay. So, let's talk about
About what?
let's talk about a little bit how you got into the lifestyle. Tell the court how you did.
Well, I like to gamble. A number of times my mother...
You like to gamble, and, I mean, we don't have to get into, like,
Okay, I'm sorry.
you like to gamble, you went
I
on
like to
gambling.
gamble, and I went on the internet, and a lot of times when you're on the internet, whether it's I went on a site called betus.com.
Okay, and through betus.com, what did you view on that site?
There are pop-ups, when you're on the internet, whether you're on a site or not, and that site specifically, there are pop-ups that come on to do with adult websites. And one of them was alt.com, another was Collar Me. And I clicked on them just to see what they were about, and I thought it was rather intriguing.
Can you give us a time frame of when that happened?
Probably 2004, 2003.
Okay. And so you're intrigued at this point, correct?
I am. It intrigued me because I am a very outgoing, dominant person. Jane was also a type A, very outgoing person. But it intrigued me because, for two reasons. One, because I never was familiar with a lifestyle. And two, because the more I got into it, I would read and understand of women who were submissive, who were seeking a dominant or a master who was compassionate, skilled, and what they were
Skilled in what area?
in the lifestyle, whether it be flogging, bondage, whatever play that they were interested in, they wanted someone who was trained. Now, the people that you indicated that we had people up here that talked about different things, those guys absolutely didn't know.
Objection, Your Honor, he can't testify to what anybody else knew.
Sustain, you
Okay,
can't say that.
I'm sorry, I apologize, but I
Don't
want
call nobody no amateur in here, okay? That's what you were kind of alluding to, right?
well, they were amateurs.
Okay, go ahead.
And this wasn't just in one day or 2 days, it was over a period of months and
Right.
a year that I started learning and I started understanding what these women were going through. They were being abused and treated poorly in the name of the lifestyle, when all these men wanted were rough sex. And so I felt like that there was something that I could do to learn, and I got into the lifestyle by talking to people. I hadn't met anyone for 2 years at that point. And I got into it, and I started learning, and I went to different events around town. There are things called munches, which happen typically on a Sunday or a Monday, where you go and people gather together and talk about a number of different issues in the lifestyle.
Okay. And at some point you meet a lady by the name of Miss Porter?
Yes.
Anita Porter?
I do.
Okay, and when was that?
2006.
Okay.
Yep.
How long did that relationship?
We were together for about a year and a half.
Okay.
Yeah, I was able to not only interact with her from that standpoint, but she had issues with her children. She had issues with finances. She was married, and her husband was also in the lifestyle. He had his own submissive, and she was free to do what she wanted to do. And she taught me a lot because she was in it for years. But I helped her not only in the lifestyle, but I helped get her a job. I got her into the Allen Park Rotary Club, which I think she's still a member of to this day, although I don't know that to be sure.
Okay.
And so...
And how did that relationship, why did it end?
Well, it ended because it was just, she was too needful. She wanted me to raise her kids for her, and I wasn't prepared to do that. That wasn't something that I wanted to do. I wanted to interact, and let me say at the same time, I also was talking to a number of other women, counseling them both online, over the phone, and I had met a couple just to meet for lunch and to talk, counseling them about their issues and their concerns. One woman...
Judge, can we ask,
Hold
can we get to a point and can he ask
I'm sorry,
questions?
go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead, Mr.
And during this time, Jane Bashara doesn't know about this type of lifestyle, or does she know?
She does not.
Okay. She knows that does she know at this point that you're engaged in other things?
She knows that I was viewing the lifestyle, and I don't know why, I can't say for her what she actually knew, but we did not discuss my involvement in the lifestyle, no.
Okay.
She knew, she described it as weird sex.
Okay. And so your relationship with Miss Porter ends because she became, you said, too needy.
It just ran its course.
Okay.
Did you have sex with Miss Porter?
I did not have sex with any of these women.
Okay.
And when we talk about that, and just for the record, we're talking about intercourse?
Yes, that's
Okay.
correct.
And what did you have with, well,
Well, ask him.
okay, what did you have with Miss Porter?
Well, with her, we engaged in BDSM play. We engaged in
And when you talk about play, you're talking about this alternate lifestyle?
the alternate lifestyle.
Okay.
We're talking about bondage. We're talking about flogging, spanking,
Okay.
those types of activities.
All right.
She did provide oral gratification to me.
So that's sex.
Well, you asked about,
That's sex if she provided oral sex to you.
yes, she did.
Okay. Did you tell your wife about that?
Did I know? Absolutely not.
Why?
Because I didn't think it's something she wanted to know.
But didn't you think that you owe her the opportunity to share, if you all sharing all this other stuff, to let her know that you were going outside your marriage?
No, because she told me I could do what I wanted to do.
Okay, okay.
But I did not share that with her. Quite
Okay.
frankly, our interaction together on a physical was very traditional sex, okay? And let me say that it was not, oral sex was not something that she was very keen on or into,
Okay,
okay?
all right, go ahead.
So after Miss Porter, is there another person that you're involved with?
Yeah, I met within, well, I've been talking to several women, like I said, and then I contacted, I've been talking to Rachel Gillette, and we agreed to meet, and we met in 2008, and I determined that she seemed like a very submissive woman who was new to the lifestyle, and I wanted to help her from that standpoint.
Okay, and this began, you said 2008?
2008.
Okay.
We met, and then, let me just clarify this. We met, and then she said that she had a meeting with another dominant, and she told me who it was, and I advised her not to go to this man, that he's a sadist, that he's a man who was very, very rough and very harsh in his treatment. Well, she'd already made the commitment, and she went to him and spent a weekend, 2 days with him. Well, she called me up on that Monday, or we talked on that Monday, and she wanted to come see me, and when she did, she wore a pair of big glasses. And when I removed the glasses, she had a black eye and a puffy cheek. And she wept in my arms and said, "I'm so sorry, you were right." And she got into this. When I removed her clothes, I discovered...
Judge,
What?
the way I understand how courtrooms work, an attorney asks the question and the defendant answers it. Mr. Ambrose is just standing there and letting him ramble on ad infinitum, ad nauseum.
So, you're gonna have to.
All right,
because we will be here for, not that we don't want to get your facts out, but you gotta do a little bit better than that.
He was answering the question,
Okay.
but I'll be more specific in some of the
Okay.
questions. Okay, so you removed her glasses and she had a black eye,
That's correct.
and you said you removed her clothing.
That's correct.
Okay, what'd you find under her clothing?
Multiple bruises on her breasts, on her arms, on her buttocks was cut and bruised, and she was a mess.
Okay.
Physically and mentally.
Oh.
And so that attracted me to this is the type of woman that I wanted to try to help within the lifestyle, within the parameters of that lifestyle.
Okay. Now, tell me what those parameters are, just briefly. What are the parameters of the
The
lifestyle?
parameters were that I have my life, which was a wonderful, wonderful life. I had raised with Jane, and certainly my mother-in-law was a big part of that, 2 children. I had developed a number of wonderful relationships with Rotary, with the schools,
Okay, but
with my church.
that was your lifestyle
What?
within the community, correct?
Correct.
And then you had this other lifestyle, is that
And
correct?
then I developed the other lifestyle later, much later in life.
Okay. And the parameters of your relationship with Rachel Gillette was what?
Only as a dominant and submissive or master and a slave. And I say slave in the regards to the lifestyle, not to do with slavery.
We know that.
Well, I want to make sure that that's
Well,
out
we know
there.
that, just keep going.
Okay.
We all know, we're well versed in this area.
Okay,
Now, that's the beginning of your relationship with Ms. Gillette, is
That's
that
correct.
correct? And then the relationship develops, correct?
that's correct.
All right. What was Ms. Gillette's background? Was she at that time married, single, divorced, separated?
She was divorced at that, so them a little bit. They had some issues in school.
All right. And
And so I was able to help her move to the east side so she could be closer.
all right, and that move to the east side, you were closely, that was your deal, wasn't it?
Pardon me?
I said that was part of you helped her immensely in that area.
Well, she had an apartment that she was driving 45 minutes to work for.
All right, and she worked
moved her to a place that was 15 minutes to work.
Okay, she worked at Wayne State University, is that
That's
correct?
correct.
Okay, and where did she move to?
She moved from Dearborn Heights to Grosse Pointe Park on Mack Avenue.
All right, and what was on Mack Avenue?
That's correct.
And, okay. Do you recall what year that was?
Not specific, I'm going to say 2009,
Okay.
late 2009.
And-
I don't recall the specific month.
During your relationship with Ms. Gillette, there are times where she indicates she wants out. Is that accurate?
Well,
She's concerned that, does she ask you about your marriage, or are you married?
absolutely she did. I
Okay.
was married, and initially I told her I was not.
Okay.
And then it came out that I was, and
How did it come out that you were?
I don't recall specifically. I'm going to say that she Googled me or somehow said, and then asked me, and when I told her, I said, yes, I am married.
Okay. So initially you lied to her?
I did.
Okay, and there are a number of lies throughout this relationship with Ms. Gillette, isn't that correct?
Absolutely, and those lies were put in place to protect my family so I could keep the lifestyle private and separate.
All right, not only protect your
family,
not only,
be quiet.
I was going to answer a question.
Excuse me, I'm sorry, Your Honor.
You said to protect your family or to protect you.
Both.
How is the lies protecting your family?
Because it segregated them from my lifestyle.
And it enabled you to enjoy two different types of lifestyles.
Yes,
Is that
ma'am.
correct?
Yes, ma'am, it did.
Okay, so you got to have the best of both worlds, right?
I had my life, and I had the life in the lifestyle that was much less of a percentage of my life than my normal life, if you will.
No, okay. Go ahead.
It was not equal in any means.
Okay, so at different points during your encounters with Ms. Gillette, she indicates that she's going to leave you.
Yes.
And how do you respond to that?
Well, it's very difficult to find someone that you mesh with in the lifestyle.
Well, I didn't ask you that. I asked you how did you respond to it? You didn't
Well,
want...
I'm going to tell you,
Okay.
I'm leading up to that it's,
Well, let's get to that. Okay, you have to answer his questions directly. Go ahead.
well, part of the answer, Your Honor, is what I'm saying.
Well, then we can't hear that. Answer his question directly. Re-ask the question, Mr. Ambrose.
All right.
She
At
said she was gonna leave.
how did you respond to her when she was saying that she wanted to leave?
Several times she expressed an interest in moving on, and I told her that she was my slave and that she should not move on. And I sent we sent a couple emails a couple times where I made promises and said things to keep her in the lifestyle with
Okay.
me.
And that was-
Because
And that was important to you because you didn't want to lose that portion of your lifestyle. Is that accurate?
well, I wouldn't have lost that portion. The key is finding an individual who you mesh with. And her and I meshed well together when it came to the dominant submissive relationship.
All right, and in order for you to keep that, you told her a lot of lies, correct?
I wouldn't say a lot, no. I told her
Well, I mean,
somewhat.
there's going to be evidence in this case. Miss Lindsay's going to bring it out, so we might as well.
Let Miss Lindsay do her job.
We might as well bring it out. You told her on a number of occasions, you led her to believe that you were still married, that you were going into a divorce, correct?
That's correct.
And the reason for that is what? Why'd you tell her those things?
Because I wanted to keep her at my side, because having to find someone else it's not an easy task. Plus, I don't think she really wanted to leave.
Now, what year was this? This was 2001.
2009, 2010.
So you met her 2008. So
Correct.
you trained her for a year. You couldn't find somebody else to train?
Well, I was interacting with several women at that point with her.
Okay, so not only did you have Rachel, you had some more. So how many other slaves were you training?
I'm going to say 3 on and off
Okay.
that came to me and interacted both with Rachel and I.
Okay, very good.
Yes, ma'am.
So
Okay.
when Rachel said, hey, I gotta go, I don't want this, why don't you just let her leave and train somebody else? I
You
mean,
know-
like you said, this was a small percentage of your life.
All right, let me explain that to you. She did one time not communicate with me for a week. This is after I sent an email to her. She didn't communicate back with me, and then a week later, she's sending me messages saying that she's sorry and she wants back in. She sat right in this chair and said to you she didn't know why she didn't leave. And she didn't leave because I treated her well, because we did mesh properly together, and because she knew that there are other dominants out there that didn't offer
Your
her.
Honor, I'm going to ask all
Sustained.
stricken about what she,
Exactly,
Thank you.
okay.
All right?
Go ahead.
I'm sorry.
Okay, now, still, during this, at some point, does she think that you're still married?
How do you know? How can he say?
Because-
I'm not sure. I'm unsure as to what she thought. We went back and forth. I mean, she really didn't, we did not discuss that. I told her that I was leaving Jane after Jesse got out of high school, and then Jesse was in college, so I let her on, absolutely.
Okay. Even after, now, let's talk about, you're pretty much involved with her in terms of things that are happening in December and January. Are you discussing, like, purchasing houses? What's going on in that area? There's like a purchase agreement that was signed,
Okay.
correct?
Well, I need to set a little, back it up a little bit, if I might.
No, you cannot. You
All right.
have to answer the
Let me-
questions that are put before you.
Well, he's asking about the house.
No, he asked, was it something?
I'm sorry, could you restate the question,
Yes.
please?
About the purchase agreement.
No, I understand. You signed a purchase agreement at some point, correct?
I signed 3 purchase agreements.
Okay, and these are different houses,
That's correct.
And on each, let's talk about the first one. Do you recall that street name?
What difference does it make?
Well, okay, let's talk about the first one. You signed a purchase agreement?
Yes, and it was in my name. The only way in real estate that you can be
We don't
assured,
need to know about real estate. Yes or no, did you sign it?
I signed a purchase agreement,
All right,
yes.
Here's
now,
the next purchase
and
agreement.
I think which, you had discussed things with your wife, Jane Bashara, regarding downsizing,
Absolutely.
okay? Was
You
this,
didn't discuss downsizing with Rachel, did you?
What do you mean downsizing?
Downsizing from the home that you share with Jane to the home you wanted to purchase with Rachel. You didn't discuss that with Jane, did you?
No, I did not, because there was no,
Okay,
there was no purchase of any
Fine,
home.
fine.
Well, Your Honor, you just,
Hold on.
Look, that's enough. Go ahead.
were you, let me ask a direct question. Were you ever intending on living with Rachel Gillette in one of those homes?
Absolutely not.
Okay. And the reason why you were involved in submitting these offers to purchase was for yourself, correct?
That's correct.
All right.
Well, let me answer that question more fully, that Jane was very busy with her new job. She
Okay.
was also very busy with Jessica and her school and
Had you discussed downsizing your residence with Jane?
with who?
With Jane?
Yes, we did. We talked that on a number of occasions.
Okay. And that was a reason why you wanted to get a market idea what was
That's
what was
correct.
the market in that
I
area?
did the research and let her know that we could buy a home that would be between 2,500 and 3,000 square feet for under $250,000. We would sell Middlesex for approximately 450 to 500,000, even though the market was terrible. We would sell it for that much, and I only owed 90 on the house, so that would allow us to have a new home free and clear.
Okay. And the reason why you're downsizing is both your kids are in college at this point.
That's correct.
Okay.
My son is out of college and gone. My daughter is at U of M. That's correct.
Okay. Now, there's a offer to purchase on Kensington. Do you recall that?
That's the third offer to purchase, yes.
All right. And do you recall when that offer to purchase was?
I don't recall. I think it was sometime in December. I can't recall. I have not seen, I understand that there's a closing statement that was given to me. It was never given to me, and I have not seen the closing statement because I don't think there was a closing statement because I never had financing and or mortgage approval for that home.
Tell me, I mean, you're making an offer to purchase on a home. You submit them a deposit, correct?
Yes, so put a $1,000 deposit down.
And what are you doing with
Well,
that?
on the The $1,000 was gone, but I had no intention on.
Let's see. When you are forward with this purchase,
No, I did not
all right,
tell them that.
did you ever?
Until the last minute where I said I backed out.
Okay. Did you ever apply for a mortgage?
No, I did not.
All right. Now, there is a letter somewhere saying
Correct.
that you had financing, but you never officially applied for a
That
mortgage.
letter was done as a general letter from Don Calcaterra at Town Mortgage, who was really the only mortgager I used in all my properties, my home, my rentals, and I asked him to provide a letter that said, if Mr. and Mrs. Bashara bring us I think that's how it read. It may have just been to me, but I don't recall specifically. But if Mr. and Mrs. Bashara bring us a deal, based on the deal, we will provide mortgage approval. That was sufficient I gave it to Miss Michelli because she wanted to know that I was, she's showing me these homes, she wanted to know that I would have mortgage approval if we found one that was suitable.
Okay.
And let me add that nowhere did Rachel's name ever appear on any of the purchase agreements.
Okay. Did you ever ask your mother regarding financing?
No, not at all.
All right.
I never asked my mother to borrow a large sum of money. I had borrowed a number of smaller amounts of money for different things, college, and to help out, but no, I did not.
Were you aware that there was a closing that was happening?
No, I was not aware of any closing. I did not get a closing statement as was testified to.
All right. Now, one of the things
Objection, Your Honor. Well, that's okay.
one of the things now you mentioned that you never received the closing statement or
That's
closing
correct.
documents, but you were here at trial and you knew what was being testified, correct?
I do,
Okay.
and it was
On
false.
that day, that morning, you are downriver?
That's correct.
Okay, where downriver are you?
I was in Wyandotte. I met Jim.
Okay, wait a minute. We're not, I have tried to give you as much latitude as I can. There are narrow issues here, okay? But supplementing the record with information, it's just not relevant to him being denied a new trial. You're gonna have to couch your questions in the terms of what the attorneys did or did not do. But this random testimony, I'm not gonna allow it.
Did your attorneys ever question that, where you were on that day that you were supposed to pick up that closing statement?
Not that
Closing
I
document.
recall.
All right.
I told them that I'd like Jim Wagner, Pat Hawkins.
Okay, now Jim Wagner is who?
Jim Wagner and Mike McCullough are the two Rotarians from downriver that I had lunch with.
And that's on the day that you're supposed to pick up this closing package?
On 124.
I
wasn't supposed to pick it up, I didn't. That
Okay.
was not ever part of the plan.
And so you have lunch, and then what happens with Mr. Hawkins?
I left Sibley's on Jefferson, which is in Wyandotte. I then drove south on Jefferson to West Road, where I went up West Road west to where the city of Trenton is, looking for Pat Hawkins. I then didn't find him at the DPW. He has an office there. And I went to the ice arena. He's a customer of mine. And I don't recall actually if I met with him or if I just checked the inventory and talked to him. But there are phone records of me
All right.
communicating with him.
And so from there, where do you go?
I go home. I
Okay,
drive-
now what time do you leave Trenton?
I'm going to say 3 o'clock, 2:45.
Okay, and you drive directly home?
I drive directly home. It's a 45-minute ride.
Okay. At any point do you never stop at the real estate agency?
The real estate company, J&J Realtors, on the hill, which is 20 to 25 minutes from my home.
Okay.
Especially at 3:30, 4 o'clock, when South's getting out, it's a madhouse there.
And so you get home, and one of the things you know is what time you put on your computer, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, what time was that?
I think it was 3:45.
Okay, so you're saying that you wanted these other people called as witnesses to show your whereabouts downriver in order to show that the people from J&J Realty were mistaken in terms of their testimony, correct?
They were not only mistaken, they were lying. It wasn't true. I did not pick up a closing statement. I did not go to the hill. I drove directly home. I let my dog out. I went up, changed, turned the computer on, worked in my office for half an hour, and at 4:20 left to go to Mack Avenue.
Okay, what are you doing at Mack Avenue?
I do a number of things at my building. That day, I wanted to sweep and clean behind the building. Winter's coming. If you recall, it was a very mild winter, and I wanted to sweep up leaves, trash, cigarette butts, a number of things that were back there. Tenants from up above will throw butts down. The waitresses and bartenders at the bar and the restaurant go out back and smoke, and they throw their butts.
All right, so you were cleaning up there. That was one of your properties,
That was
correct?
one of my properties,
Okay,
correct.
how long are you there?
I am there till 6 o'clock.
Okay, what do you do at 6 o'clock?
I'm in the Hard Luck Lounge from 4:45 to 6 o'clock having a drink. I then leave the Hard Luck Lounge
What time do you leave the Hard Luck Lounge?
a minute to 6 o'clock.
Okay.
And I put my, there was a tote I was using for the leaves. I put that back where it went. I got in my car, and by 6:05, I'm driving home.
Okay, what time do you arrive home?
Well, it's a 10 to 12-minute ride, so I'm home by 17 after.
And why are you going home?
I had to pick up,
And I don't need the whole story, Mr. Bashara. You told me before what the
To
whole
pick up
story-
some keys.
Okay, the key, why didn't you have those keys with you?
because the weekend before, when I was in Oregon, I took them off my ring. I never traveled with my full wad of keys.
And you were in Oregon with who?
Weekend before that, I think on the 14th, 15th.
All right, and that was part of the whole lifestyle thing too, right?
That's correct.
Okay, so you had taken off those keys prior to you going to Oregon.
That's correct.
All right, and so you don't have those keys while you're cleaning. Is that
That's right.
accurate?
And
Okay.
I wanted to get into part of my building.
And
I
what
did-
were you going to get in part of that building?
Well, that part of the building was a garage connected to the old photographic studio. And in that garage, I had a piles and piles of belongings from 2 previous tenants. And I would be going through these piles, pulling out different things, sorting them, separating them. I was done cleaning. I wanted to get in there. I didn't have the keys. I drove home to get the keys and was back by 6:25, 6:30, where I saw Liz Stone behind the building.
Okay, and who is Liz Stone?
Liz Stone, unbeknownst to me, I'd never met her prior to that, was a friend of Missy Keller's, who's a tenant of mine.
Okay, all right. And then you're back at the bar. Or,
I leave my house within 2 minutes. I grab the keys, use the bathroom, back in the car, and I drive home.
what do you notice when you're at the home?
I noticed when I walked in that Jane's briefcase was right by the door where she always leaves it, so I knew she was home.
All right, do you talk to her at all?
No, because I didn't see her on the first floor, and I wanted to get back. We talked previous at around 4:30, I think, as she was ready to leave work or leaving work. We had talked and said that
Okay.
I said hi and went into the bar. I then told Christy, who was the bartender, that I wanted the tab. I had a friend coming up and I wanted the tab for it because Mike always wanted to pay. And I said, it's my turn to pay. And then I went out. Mike called me. I went out and met him, and we walked into the bar at 7 o'clock.
Okay, and you stayed there, you said an hour or so?
Till 8 o'clock. I left at 8 o'clock.
Okay. Now, just, you know, you've been in prison for a while now, correct?
I was incarcerated in end of June 2012.
All right. And you were provided some of the phone records, is that correct? Your own phone records?
I'm sorry?
You were provided with your own phone records?
As far as prison records or?
No, your phone records regarding...
Yes, I did see
And
those.
is that why you know the specific times?
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
You didn't know at that time that at 6:26 you were calling
No,
so-and-so?
I did
You know
not.
it because you've seen the records and
Absolutely.
Okay.
And it was brought up as well in court.
Okay. All right. So you get home around 8 o'clock?
8 o'clock. Oh, no, I leave the bar at 8 o'clock. Again, it's a 10 to 12 minute ride. I don't recall if I took Alter or Mac to Alter and down Alter, or if I went down Nottingham, or not Nottingham, but Balfour to, a lot of times I would take Balfour, cross down to Essex and
At
over.
some point you...
I'm home at say 8:10, 8:15.
Okay. And at that point, is Jane home?
No, she's not.
And did that have concerns?
No, not initially. I thought maybe she had gone over to Patty's. I thought maybe she went to the village. I didn't know what she was doing. When I talked to her earlier, she said she was on her way home, and that was the only discussion we had as far as what her evening held. She usually made herself a salad for dinner or something light for dinner, had a glass of wine. I know she recorded a lot of the Dancing with the Stars and So You Think You Can Dance. She loved those shows.
Okay.
And
at some point during that evening, though, you become concerned?
I do. Around 9 o'clock, after 45 minutes or so, I looked through the house and I didn't find her, and so I go back in my office and start working and doing what I wanted to do. And about 9 o'clock, I'm a little concerned.
So
And let me be real clear about this point. Every time my wife had left the house, whether it was in the morning for something she wanted me to do, she was a great list lady. She made lists of lists.
Okay.
And so if she left somewhere, she would say, went to Fairfax, be back in an hour or half an hour or whatever.
And that was, did she do that on that evening?
No, she did not.
Okay. And did that have a
The
concern?
what?
Did that have a concern to you?
Well, at 9 o'clock, I'm beginning to wonder where she is. So I called her. I think I may have called her mother, actually. I have to look at I don't recall the phone records. It's been a while since I looked at them. But I made several calls. I called Patty Matthews to find out where was Jane there.
All right. And Patty Matthews is a close friend.
Is her very close friend.
All right. And what time, okay, at some point also, what time did you call the police?
Well, that wasn't till later. That was probably 11 or 11:20, and that was at the suggestion of Debbie Breen.
All right, and who's Debbie Breen?
Debbie Breen is a close personal friend of ours who went through a divorce a couple years prior.
And you spoke
I
to Debbie?
called first of all, let me say I called my mother to ask her if she had heard or seen from Jane. I didn't think she would, but I called her, and she said, well, what's going on? I said, well, we were supposed to work on taxes. I got home at 8:15 and she wasn't home. And so now it's 9:30, and I'm a little worried. I think I called my mother around 9:30, 10 o'clock, and to say, I'm a little concerned. And I called her back 20 minutes later. I also called Debbie. I know I called Debbie because I thought maybe Jane went over to Debbie's house to have a wine or something with Debbie.
Debbie Breen is the one who suggested maybe calling the police?
That's correct. That was late. Actually, before that, I told my mother, Debbie came over, and we called the St. John Hospital, we called Bon Secours and Cottage to see if there was someone, if Jane was there, and St. John had a Jane Doe. And so my mother lives at 8 Mile and Mac. St. John's is at 7 and Mac. So I asked my mother to swing by St. John's to see if Jane Doe was in fact my Jane. And it wasn't. It was an African-American woman. My mother then came to my house. We talked a little bit. I actually think her and Debbie got in the car and drove around for a little while. I don't know if that was before we called the police or after.
I hate to object at this point, but can we get to something instead of just letting him just go on and on?
I agree with the same. Go
All
ahead.
right. All right, so there's no contact with Jane whatsoever at this point?
No.
And you're...
No, which caused me to get more increasingly worried as the night drew on. And that's why I called the police.
Okay.
And let me just say, no?
This is the situation.
Yes, ma'am.
This is just to show what the attorney
Okay, fine.
did not do.
All right.
Okay?
Okay.
So can we follow along with that, Mr. Ambrose?
Sure.
Okay? Your Honor, may I get a drink of water?
Can we get some
Do
water?
you have a cup or something I could?
Can you get us some water?
I'm sorry.
All right. I want to step back a little bit and
I can't hear you,
I
sir.
said I want to go over some of the things that your relationship with Joseph Gens.
Okay.
All right. And when did you first?
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Your Honor.
When did you first meet Joseph Gens?
When did I first meet him or talk to him?
Okay, talk to me.
I first talked to him, I was given his name and number by Steve Tabato.
Okay, and what did Steve Tabato say?
Steve Tabato is a man I'd known for probably 10 to 15 years. I had bought appliances from him at all of
He's
them.
the owner of Steve's Furniture
He is.
or appliances?
That's correct.
And so he knows Joseph Gens.
Apparently he referred him to me, so I assume he did.
All right, and so at some point you speak with Joseph Gens?
I do. He calls me. Steve tells me we'll give him a call. I said, no, you have him call me. Steve told me that he was a decent guy. He was a little goofy, but he was all right, and he needs a place to rent, a 2-bedroom to rent for he and his daughter he was trying to gain custody of. And I told him that I told Steve as well as I told Joe that I didn't have a 2-bedroom in any of my properties, but I was representing a woman that did have a
And who
2-bedroom.
is that lady?
Pardon me?
Who is that lady that you...
Yes, Rebecca Fortin.
Okay, and so at some point you and Joseph Gantz meet with Ms. Fortin?
Initially, I meet Joe at the first meeting I had with him. He called me. It took us probably a half dozen to 8 calls going back and forth to get together. And he came to my St. Clair Shores apartment at 11 and a half in Jefferson. He met me there. He said that he was leaving Eagle Point because they doubled his rent and he had to leave.
Okay.
And I meet him in St. Clair Shores at 11 and a half in Jefferson.
Okay, and...
That's my first meeting.
Okay, and so when do you meet with Ms. Fortin and Mr. Gantz?
Well, I have the keys to her duplex. I'm responsible for renting the upper duplex. That was our relationship, or our agreement. And so I have the keys. It's on a lockbox, and I have that number and the keys. So I, again, after probably a half dozen phone calls, I meet Joe Gantz at the property. This is prior to Rebecca Fortin getting there. I meet him there, show him the empty apartment. He says he likes it. I said, well, let me talk to the owner, and I'll set up another meeting.
Okay, and another meeting is set up, correct?
Yes, and several days later, and again, after a number of phone calls, it just seemed like he and I couldn't connect on this phone. There was a number of phone calls. We meet Rebecca, I think it was on the 8th of October, at the property, and he and I and Rebecca go up to the apartment, and he again looks at it. We talk about the stove that's not there, that she's going to get a stove for him, and
Okay, let's move forward.
Eventually he signs this lease, correct?
after we looked at the apartment, I told him that told her that I would prepare a lease, and we would meet at her mother's house on Beaconsfield that I had rented several months prior.
And you do that, correct?
We do that.
Okay.
I go home, I prepare the lease from one of my leases, but I got to get on a computer and change the...
Okay, counsel,
All right.
stop.
Yes,
Oh, no, not you, counsel.
I'm sorry.
Okay, you the witness. Counsel, we're gonna have to do it differently about evidence that should have been admitted that wasn't. This was all admitted. Okay, everything he's saying was testified to. Now you're gonna have to couch it in terms of what was deficient to grant them new trial, because I heard all of this.
But one of the things that Mr. Bashara is saying is that he was advised by his attorneys not to testify.
Okay, well, fine. He's not going to testify here. You've got to talk about what was not done, what should have been done that affected his ability to have a fair trial. Now, just testifying because he wants to testify today, well, that's wonderful, but that's not going to make me grant a new trial. So we need to talk about procedurally the things that were not done to prevent the court from substantively having information that it views as critical, okay? So let's go from there.
All right. One of the things that Joseph Gantz, this is your first encounter with Mr. Gantz?
That's correct.
Okay, our first meetings with him.
That's correct.
Do you, at some point, try to assist him with regard to utilities?
I didn't
With
hear...
regard to the utilities of the place?
Yes.
Okay, so he signs a lease with Fortin, and with regard to the utilities, what
Several weeks later, he called me and asked me if I would be able to put the utilities in his name.
all right, and so those utilities were put in your name?
I did that.
And had you ever done that previously to any tenant?
For several other tenants, yes.
Was that something that was ever brought out at trial?
No, it wasn't. In fact, I recommended that Armanda Armstrong and that John Giannakis and several other people be called as witnesses to say that I had done that for them to show that it wasn't just for Joe Gentz.
Okay, and that was important to you because of what you weren't showing special interest in Joseph Gentz.
No, I was not.
All right, but you had done this for prior tenants, and you
I had.
and you did
Probably a half dozen over 20 years.
Okay.
I don't make a habit of it, but I did it when they asked me, especially in Joe Gentz's case because he was doing work for me.
Okay.
Now,
and now let's talk about the work that he was
sure.
doing. At some point, you have him work on your property
Yes, I do.
and your rental properties.
Yes, he works on my Mac property twice. He works at my house probably 3 or 4 times.
And are you paying him during this time, or what's
No,
going on?
I am accruing his hours and tell him that once he reaches a certain amount, I will pay him. The big job that I wanted him to do, there were 2 of them. One, Rebecca Fortin, and this was never asked by my attorneys, that Rebecca Fortin asked me to get a price on painting the upper railings on her balcony overhang.
All right, and so that was something that you asked Joseph Gentz to do.
Joe, at the time that we met with Rebecca, I said, Joe, is this something you can do? And he said, absolutely.
Right.
It involved scraping and painting, so it was a simple task. But I told Rebecca that I would get a price, and I asked my attorneys to ask her about that, and they failed to do that.
Okay, and that was important to show what?
Well, to show several things. One, that I'm trying to get Joe work, and that I was also going to make money on that, and that I was trying to help Rebecca Fortin out. That it wasn't, I think that was the main reason. It was important that they know that that's the type of person I am.
All right, and that Joseph Gentz could do certain work for people.
Yes.
All right.
I wanted to try to help this guy out. He wanted to help his daughter. That was my impression, and that was my understanding initially.
Okay, and so that initial contact with Mr. Gentz when he signs the lease and so forth, that happens in what month and what year?
October 8th, all the same day.
Okay, and during this period of time, are you engaging in his services, or are you asking him to work? What's going on?
Well, initially I didn't. As we, I think within a week I said, because when I asked him about the railing, he said, I do handyman and odd jobs. And I said, is this a railing something you can do? Well, I needed some drywall work done on my Mac property, and Jane and I, every fall, we had a very lush backyard.
All right, and you asked him to work on your backyard?
I did.
Okay, and he came out to your backyard?
He did. Only with me. He never came by himself.
Okay, not that you're aware of?
Not that I'm aware of, correct.
So he actually, do you introduce him to Jane?
No, I do not.
Okay, but at some point he sees Jane?
He had never met Jane face to face, like walking up and saying hello to her or being introduced to her.
Right.
We were working in the backyard. We were at the back end of the property trimming some bushes and some trees that were growing on the fence line. Jane yelled out and said, I've got lemonade for you guys. And she put it on the grill, which is the little grill porch.
Lemonade out, he saw her?
And he saw her.
Okay.
And he said, is that your wife? And I said, yes, that's my wife, Jane.
Okay. Now, there are other projects you want Mr. Gentz to perform, is that accurate?
Well, in addition to the railing, the main project was my roof.
Okay, and you are in some sort of communication with him during the next couple of months?
Absolutely.
On different things?
Well,
You're trying to get him to work, and how is your communication with Gentz?
It's very, very difficult. A lot of times I would call him, and then he would call me back, and I couldn't take the call. I was in a meeting, so we went back and forth.
Now, the phone records you had a chance to review.
I did.
Okay, and you looked at You've had a long time to review those, correct?
I have.
All right, and the vast majority of those phone records regarding the times of them, the duration of the phone calls, how much time would you say those lasted?
I made detailed notes.
I don't want to
I'm
talk
sorry.
about detailed notes, Mr. Bashara. I'm asking you a specific question. I mean, are these long conversations the phone records represent, or short conversations, or short connections?
Well, there were many, many calls. Some of them were never connected, under 40 seconds.
And that's what I want.
Probably 65% of every call that I made, that I saw that I made to, or Joe Gentz made to me, 65% was under 40 seconds.
All right, and so are you suggesting that you never actually spoke to him during these contacts?
Absolutely. At a 40-second call, by the time the phone starts going, when it's ringing, and until
I'm
that.
going to object to he can't testify how the company does things.
But, so you had a chance to review those records,
Yes, sir.
and you're saying 65% of that time, you never actually speak to him?
That's correct, and that was never brought out when they had Stan Brew on the stand talking about phone records. He testified to this point,
Okay.
let me finish, please. He testified to the point that he only reviewed the records that Miss Lindsay asked him to review. In other words, he didn't look at the details. He didn't look at any type of call patterns other than just from me to him and him to me and the amount of calls per month. He didn't look at duration. He didn't look at any of those facts. And had that been brought out by my attorneys, it would have minimized this idea that I was grooming Mr. Gentz or conspiring with him to kill my wife.
All right, now, these phone contacts with him, what are you contacting him for?
What am I doing?
Why are you contacting him?
Well, there's several reasons. One, for the first month, I wanted to get a price from him on the railing.
Okay.
When we first met at my St. Clair Shores property, he told me that he had done odd jobs, and I said, "Have you ever done roofing work?" And he said, "Yes." And he said, "I've done tarring and sealing." And I said, "Well, I've got 2 flat roofs that need to be sealed," which was my interest in hiring him.
All right, at some point you actually go out to home, I mean, was that ever brought out at trial?
What? I'm sorry.
Was your contact and you wanted this information brought out at trial?
That's correct.
Okay. At some point, and some of these things only you can testify to, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. At some point, you go to Home Depot and purchase a bunch of things.
I do. I purchased several 5-gallon buckets of sealer.
And sealer for Joseph Gentz to do work.
That's correct.
Okay. Do you recall when that was?
End of October.
Okay. Does he ever do that type of work? Did he do it?
Well, he didn't. No, that was one of the reasons for my large volume of calls. He had November and December. Again, that December was a very, very mild winter, probably one of the most mild.
And during this mild winter, he still does not work.
He does not do any of the roof work I asked him to
Are you
do.
getting frustrated during this time?
To a point, yeah, because my roof's leaking, and Rocco Synchronelia, who is my main tenant at Dillon's, is complaining because the roof's leaking on him.
Okay. And you continue to contact Joseph Gentz and he's not doing work for you?
Continuously.
Okay.
About that, and I also wanted to make sure about the utilities being paid.
Let's talk about the utilities.
Sure.
Though you're getting bills in your name, correct?
That's correct.
At some point, you become aware that these bills are not being paid.
That's correct.
And Joseph Gentz is supposed to be paying these bills,
Right.
correct?
I put them in my name in October. I got the first bill in November. He got sent a bill, and I got sent a duplicate copy.
And you're aware now that he's not paying that.
Well, I wasn't right away, but after I got a late notice in the middle of December for the November bill, I then went to him and said, "Why haven't you paid this bill? I want this bill paid."
All right. At some point, does Jane Bashara know that you have a late notice?
Yes.
When is that?
Objection. He can't testify.
Well, I do know because,
I'm saying you can't say when she knew.
well, she told me.
Well,
No, that's hearsay, no. Go
did
ahead.
you had a conversation with Ms. Bashara?
Objections are relevant.
Sustained. Let's move on about what the lawyers didn't do, okay?
Well, this is a very important part of the
What?
case regarding,
About this roof?
now about the utility bill.
Okay, we're gonna move on from that.
Okay.
The utility bill, if it had been introduced, would have shown what?
That it was late,
Okay?
that it was never brought out at trial that Jane Bashara was not pleased with this late bill coming in.
What difference does it make?
They have, because I don't want to put words in his mouth, I prefer it coming directly from him.
What difference would it make if she wasn't happy about the bills being paid
Because
late?
there's a conversation that happens between Bob Bashara and Joseph Gass that may have triggered this incident.
Judge,
It's not relevant. Move on. Move on, counsel.
At a risk of, I don't want to be disrespectful to the court, but I think it's an important aspect.
Let me explain the rules, excuse me, in this courtroom. If I rule on something, it's preserved and a higher court can review it, but you have to go through a different route.
Okay, but can I at least
Not
put it,
now.
can I put it on the record as to why it's important?
Not now. Move on.
This whole area, though, that we're alluding to is never part of the record, correct?
Judge, can I?
That's something that his attorneys didn't bring out.
The
that I
reason
wanted
why
to-
I want to object is because he waived his right not to testify. He already said that these are things that can only have come from him. If he waived his right not to testify, and he did it knowingly and voluntarily, why are we even going through this? So what? The jury didn't hear it. He had a right at the point in time at the trial to testify, and he chose not to. So what he would have said had he testified is not relevant here because he waived his right.
Respond.
Yeah, I think Mr. Bashara stated at the very beginning he wanted to testify.
But okay, then that's one area. Then we go on to another area. But we don't go into detail about what he would have said had he testified. Okay? That's what I want you to, in order for me to understand what's going on, what the lawyer should have done, didn't do, and were requested to do. Now, anything about if he had testified, what he would have said about a number of things is not relevant because he had a right to do it and he waived that right. So let's move on. That's my ruling. You object, let's go on. Let's move to another area, okay?
Your attorneys told you, you tell me what your attorneys told you if you were to testify.
My attorneys, both of them, Mr. McCarthy and Ms. Diallo, after repeated requests for me to, I wanted to testify because there was so much misinformation, so many lies, so many pieces of false evidence that were presented that I knew was absolutely incorrect. I wanted to testify, and they told me that if I did, I would be convicted, that I should absolutely not testify, that they had this, don't worry about it, we've got this, you have to trust our years and years of experience, and I felt that I was grossly misled by that.
Okay.
But you had an opportunity, first of all, number one, you knew that there were some lies that were being
I
told.
can't hear you, Your Honor.
I said you knew there were lies that were being told on the stand. Is that
Yes.
correct, by witnesses?
Right.
When all of the testimony was completed, and you had an opportunity to testify, to correct those lies, and I asked you, do you want to
You
testify?
did.
Why didn't you then say, yes, I want to testify?
Your Honor, I said very clearly, at the advice of my attorneys, I am not going to testify.
So now, after the jury comes back and you're convicted, you now say, well, if I had testified, it would have been a different result. Is that what you're saying?
Your Honor, I believe that my attorneys did throughout the whole, first of all, these are the third sets of attorneys that I had.
Okay.
All right. I had been misrepresented by David Grimm initially in the whole media interviewing deal that he did for me, or actually worked very much against me. I had been, the situation between Procida and Cooper was tenuous at best, and you removed them because you saw that. Mr. Cooper was taken off for whatever reason. I don't think we're quite clear on why that was.
But it's not relevant.
Well,
Go ahead.
it's important to me at that point.
Okay, so here's the background. Before trial, you knew that these lawyers that you had, David Grimm you retained, and Procida and Cooper were court appointed, that they were misleading you, not giving you good information. The court then gives you 2 more attorneys. Now, with that background information...
No, the court actually gave me David Cripps, and he was removed.
Okay, very
and
good.
I fired David Grimm.
Okay, well, very good, but he was retained by you.
That's correct.
Okay, but very good. So the background is, these are lawyers that are giving you bad information. You had a right to testify. Why would you trust those lawyers if everybody else been lying to you that's been a lawyer?
You know, initially you had said...
Answer the question.
I am. Initially you said these are very fine attorneys that we're giving you. Pardon?
So what you saying, you did it for me?
No, not at all. I did it for me. I was happy that I was getting good representation. You espoused their skills and said that they're very, very good and competent attorneys. It's on the record.
Right.
And I was happy with that. I trusted you as well, in your opinion, and appointing these attorneys to me.
Okay.
I learned as the trial progressed that they weren't following through, they weren't doing. I should have fired them. Had I fired them mid-trial, then what would have happened?
Let me ask you a question. At any time, did you take the time to write me letters about you were dissatisfied about what they were doing?
No.
Did you? Okay.
I didn't.
Go ahead. Let's take a recess. You got to call that witness, okay? We're going to find out. Let's take a 15-minute recess, okay? All right. Do you want to get it? Give me those. We'll take a 15-minute recess.